Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So with pre-releases starting very, very soon for Surging Sparks, and with a whole set list now known, it's time we have a look at the top 10 cards from Surging Sparks. And I'm going to start off with a couple of shout-outs cards that didn't make the list, but ones I want to talk about anyway. As a Maril, I am a huge fan of, and I think it has a chance to be great. Single Energy 230. If you've got any Terra Pokemon in play, Stage 1 Single Energy 230. This is going to be a single prize deck that a lot of people are going to play. I don't know how great it's going to be, and it's been underwhelming in Japan so far, but I'm telling you, this one has a huge amount of potential. One that I love just as much, that does not have a huge amount of potential, but I want to believe it does, is Palossand EX. Free energy, and you get to put all of your opponent's bench Pokemon until they've got 100 HP remaining. I mean, come on! Tell me there isn't at least a world in which that could end up being good. I'm also a massive Palossand fanboy, so I might be overthinking this. And Energy Search Pro, it's the second best ace spec in the set, I think. And we might talk more about this later. But basically, it's just seeing playing Golden Go right now. Only Golden Go. Literally only Golden Go. So don't get terribly excited. But the fact that it's even seeing any play in any deck is a little bit surprising to me and kind of awesome. And I've got my eye on it. Oh, and actually, just before we get going, I'm going to mention Archaladon here. It's a decent enough Pokemon. It's a pretty good attacker. It's got an ability whereby you can accelerate a couple of energy. Although I've said this before and I'll say it again, I really think this is an ability where really good for getting itself up and rolling, but not good enough if you're trying to accelerate energy to other Pokemon. And then it's got a decent enough attack. It's seen a little bit of playing success in Japan since it launched. I just don't think it's good enough to be on the top 10 list. I wanted to mention it here because I think if I don't, some people will think I've forgotten about it. And I'm not saying it's a bad card. I just don't want to take anything above it off to put this on the top 10 list. So I'm not going to. So coming in at real number 10, we've got Milotic EX. And here it's all about the ability Sparkling Scales. Prevent all damage from and effects of attacks from your opponent's Terra Pokemon done to this Pokemon. And essentially, this is seeing play in really a genre of deck almost over in Japan, which is just a block deck. So you'll play it with Mimikyu, which doesn't take damage from EXs and Pokemon Vs. You'll play it with Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon, which will not take damage from Pokemon that have an ability. You play it with Farigiraf, for instance, which stops attack from basic EXs. There are a bunch of these blocking Pokemon we've got around right now, and essentially all of them are mashed in different quantities into your generic blocking deck over in Japan right now, and Milotic seems like a very important part of the puzzle. And for that reason, it's making it onto the list. In at number 9, we've got Gastrodon, which is actually a card that sees play in that Milotic blocking deck, but it sees play in a bunch of other decks as well. It's got the ability Sticky Bind that says as long as it's on the bench Stage 2 Pokemon have no abilities. It doesn't work on the active Pokemon. It doesn't work if it is the active Pokemon. It only turns off Stage 2s. But we have a bunch of really good Stage 2 abilities right now that are seeing a bunch of play. Things like Gardevoir, for instance. Things like Charizard and Pidgeot. And for that reason, this is a decent Pokemon that is seeing a bunch of play and will continue to do so. In at number 8, we've got Hydreigon. And basically, this is a super awkward, phenomenal attacker. 2 energy, 200, discard the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. Or 4 energy, but 3 of them are different colours. We've got 1 Psychic, 1 Darkness, 1 Metal, and then a colourless. 130 to the active and 2 of your opponent's bench. And sure, it's awkward, don't get me wrong, but the potential here is just absolutely immense. We're seeing it with Mirage Gate in Lost Zone decks. We're seeing it as its own deck where you can play it with stuff like Crispin, for example, to get the energy, and Sparkling Crystal. And I'm just saying there is a lot of potential here. This is one to keep an eye on. In at number 7, we've got Rotom. Rotom's good, honestly. Rotom is a basic Pokemon that attacks for a single energy, which makes it very, very easy to tech into a whole bunch of decks. And basically, for a single lightning energy, you look at your opponent's hand and discard all items and all tools. Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's great. It's already being teched into a bunch of Miraidon decks. There is a lot of potential for it to be teched into a lot of other decks in the future. Anything playing Lightning or an energy that can count as Lightning can use this as a great trick, especially turn 1 going second, where you can go after these cards before your opponents even had a chance to draw a supporter. In at number 6, we've got Pikachu, and I don't know what to do about Pikachu. I told you the other day that Pikachu right now is underwhelming in Japan. The main use for it seemed to be in Miraidon decks to open up your Area 0 Underdepths because it's a basic Lightning Terra Pokemon. Okay. The thing is, that was like the first weekend. Since then, we have seen a few Pikachu EX decks starting to do well, mostly with Blissey. Because Blissey, you can use Glass Trumpet to pop energy onto it, and then you can use Blissey to move the energy over, and it kind of makes a huge amount of sense in that regard. And the thing is, yes, it's a little bit awkward attack cost-wise, but 300 damage is great. And it's got an ability that says it can't be one-hit KO'd. It goes down to 10 HP instead. It's got a huge amount of potential, and I'm not saying these Blissey lists that have popped up in the past couple of days are the answer, but I am saying they might be. So I'm tentatively putting Pikachu in at number 6, but the fact that it's a tech in Miraidon and might now be its own deck, and it took a couple days to get there, I'm saying keep an eye on Pikachu. This one could go a lot higher. In at number 5, we got another EX. It's Ceruledge. Now, I'm cheating a little bit with this one. Well, not really so much, but basically this has been out for a couple of months, whereas the cards from Super Electric Breaker in Japan have just come out. But the attack Abyssal Flames does 30 damage plus 20 more for each energy card in your discard pile. So you pile energy in there super quickly, and then you've got a really good attack that just gets more and more powerful as the game goes along. It's great. And the funny thing is, it was released in its own deck in Japan, with its own 8-spec Brilliant Blender that discards 5 cards from your deck. No one's even playing it with that, everyone's playing it with Legacy Energy. Because Legacy Energy means you give up 1 less prize. So it kind of is as simple as that. Legacy Energy is the answer. And I mean, like, every list I've seen for this in the past few weeks is playing Legacy Energy. It is pretty much determined at this point. Good deck, legit, keep an eye on it. In at number 4, another card that came from those EX decks, but the other one, it's Precious Trolley. The best A-spec in the set. It lets you search the deck for any number of basic Pokemon and pop them onto your bench. Already seeing play in a bunch of different decks over in Japan, and one that is going to just end up being teched into just so many different decks between now and the time that it rotates out. It is a very good utility EX, and we'll probably see more play than the vast majority of this list. In at number 3, we've got Koraidon, which maybe should be below Precious Trolley, but it's my list and I'm putting it in at number 3. Probably my favourite single card from the set, at least not including Azumarill and Palossand, that I'd mentioned earlier. I adore this. 2 energy, 30 damage, 2 colourless energy. But if any of your other ancient Pokemon use an attack during your last turn, this attack does 150 more damage. Cool. Here's the thing though, we've already seen that Roaring Moon EX is still a good deck, and that is a deck which is only ever really going to attack with ancient Pokemon, so this is basically always going to be online. We've seen that the single prize Roaring Moon in his Ancient Box deck is very good and incidentally makes a comeback in this set largely because of this card. Yeah, that's now really good. And sees play with this as well, because you've just got a 2 energy, 180 whenever you want it, 2 colorless energy as well. And basically, it's a hyper aggro deck, which is incredibly good, doesn't need you to fill your discard pile like Single Prize Roaring Moon does, although you've always got the option. I just think this is brilliant, and it's already seeing play in both of those decks. It is fantastic. Yes, it only works if you are using ancient attacks every turn, admittedly, but in decks that you are, it's redonk. In at number 2, we've got Magneton. And the funny thing about Magneton is, it is both one of our pre-release promos and our Elite Trainer Box promo from this set. And honestly, it probably should be. It's that gosh darned good. It's great. It's brilliant. It's awesome. Love it. Absolutely love it. But what does it actually do? Well, you KO it, which is less than ideal, admittedly. But then you get to attach free basic energy from your discard to your lightning Pokemon in any way that you like. That's brilliant. Genuinely, awesomely brilliant. So yeah, it's great. It's going to make a huge difference to all lightning decks. And, you know, it's already seen play in a bunch of Miraidon builds. Not every Miraidon build, but a bunch of them. It's just a ridiculously good card that's going to see a huge amount of play. And that's wonderful. But that means that coming in at number 1, we got Latias EX. Not the most exciting card in the set, but from everything I can see, and, you know, I'm largely basing this list on what we're seeing from Japanese results, this card is a staple in a bunch of decks. Miraidon decks. Oh, basically, it's the ability Skyliner gives all your basic Pokemon no retreat. So Miraidon decks that pretty much only play basic Pokemon, yeah, they're playing it. Raging Bolt decks that pretty much only play basic Pokemon, they're playing it. Roaring Moon decks, the EX that only playing basic Pokemon, they're playing it. And the thing is, it says your basic Pokemon, not your other basic Pokemon. So it even gives itself free retreat. So basically, okay, fine, you might be playing against something that stops you retreating, but unless you are, you can always get any of your Pokemon out of the active. Your opponent cannot make something stuck in the active, unless they're stopping you retreating, of course. It's great. Absolutely brilliantly great. It is not the most exciting card in the set, and I ain't pretending it is, but I'm telling you that if we're looking at the cards that are most likely to see the most play, this is the best card in the set, and I feel pretty strongly about that. So there we go. That's my top 10 list. Now it's over to you guys. Do you think there's any cards in this list that shouldn't be on the list? Do you think there are any cards in Searching Sparks that aren't on the list that should be? Let me know in the comment section. Get us. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And of course, get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely Unknown One, who's not unknown to us. They're lovely and they've been supporting for a while, so shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.